Good evening and welcome back to the 41st Mill Valley Film Festival. I'm Zoe Elton, Director of Programming for the festival, and it's my great honor to welcome you here tonight for a spotlight on Karyn Kusama and a screening of Destroyer. I think I probably need to mention to you to turn off your devices as well, if you wouldn't mind. But you are welcome to tweet and go onto social media and tell people your impressions of the film afterwards. We'd love you to do that. Somebody asked me just now, where we were in the festival, and honestly, after the intensity of the last few days, I don't even really quite know where we are in the festival, but I think it's Wednesday. Hopefully that proves to be true. So we heard word of this project sort of earlier on in the season, and there was a lot of excitement about it. And we were excited to see it. And it offers us the opportunity to do a spotlight program, which, as you know, is a program where we honor a film artist at a particular point in their career, with a particular project. So it's not so much about, a Lifetime Achievement Award. It's really noticing a very particular and wonderful project. And along with many other films that Karyn Kusama has made, this is one of those moments. I think our staff as well, many of whom have been following her work since Girl Fight, were so excited that we would get Karyn here. She's truly one of the most exciting directors of cinema that we have in America today. And Destroyer is an extraordinary project. I'd like to introduce you to her. Karyn Kusama, please come on down. Welcome to Mill Valley.
Thank you so much. This is a festival I've always wanted to attend, and so to be here now and see all your faces is sort of mind-boggling. I'm so thankful that you're here. Those were such kind words that I feel nervous to live up to. And I just wanted to say that I hope you enjoy the film. I thank you so much for being here. And afterwards, I hope you'll join me and Zoe for a Q&A with my writers and producers, Phil Hay and Matt Manfredi, and I really look forward to seeing you guys afterwards if you feel like staying. Thank you.
Karyn, thank you very much. Have a great screening. I would like to welcome to the stage Julie Hunsinger, who is the Queen-in-Chief of the Telluride Film Festival. Julie, please come on up. Julie has a lot of insight, I think, into Karyn's work, and I've invited her here to present the Mill Valley Film Festival Award. Thank you.
Thank you, Zoe, so much. Wow, right? And I really think this is the kind of film that should be seen again and again. You might need a little break before you see it again, but as you watch it, I don't know about you, but I was so in love with the care and layered work that Karyn achieved in this film. For me, the symmetry, I kept saying this is cinematic origami, the way she's made the film. If you start noticing the geometry and the shapes, Nicole's eyes from the beginning to that last shot, Karyn, to say she's gifted is an understatement beyond. I am such a huge fan of hers, and when I was younger, I've always loved rock music a lot. And I used to get a little bit mad because there weren't that many cool chicks who could rock other than Chrissie Hynde. And as time went on, Courtney Love came along and other cool rocker chicks. Karyn rocks. Karyn is a badass. Karyn is a genius. Was so honored. We were so honored to have her film in Telluride. And now to welcome her to Mill Valley is so great. I wish her and the film all the best in the world. And we're very, very proud to give her this award. Karyn. I'm your #1 fan.
Thank you so much. This is incredible. Thank you. Thank you.
Julie Hunsinger, thank you.
Incredible. I'm not going to say much here except to say that I really do believe with each and every film it's just sort of a privilege to get to keep doing this. It's a privilege to tell stories. It's a privilege to have people watch your film and even decide to stay after the credits roll. So I am so appreciative of that. And if there's anything I've learned in my, I hope, still short career, it's that making movie after movie has been a test of, I want to say, a kind of emotional and creative stamina. And I'm learning that I have the stamina, but what builds the stamina are the people that I keep around me. And I'm so thankful for festivals like these that create a community of film lovers and film goers and art lovers who want to commune in the same place together and watch a story together. And I also feel so thankful to have built some of that stamina with the support of amazing creative collaborators. And so I'm so excited to introduce them right now. I want to say the loves of my life. Phil Hay, my husband, who is also one of the screenwriters and producers of the film. And his forever partner in writing, Matt Manfredi, who I also love deeply. Thank you.
Let's get mics to our other guests. Yeah, thank you. I have a feeling you two share a lot, so I think sharing a mic is just, it's
not
just
a
a
problem.
part of that thing, right? So, Erin Bell, what a intense, messy, extreme, damaged, wonderful character. So, as writers and as director, what do you love about her?
I mean, I love that question. I think that for me, just jumping in, I love a lot of things about her, but the thing, and as difficult as she is, and as wrong as she is often, something I really love about her is her ultimate willingness to face herself and ultimate willingness to be accountable. That's what I love about her.
Yeah. Matt, what about you?
I think her tenacity, her kind of relentless motion forward in service of what she wants, despite everybody telling her that she can't do it, or she's terrible, or she's weak, or whatever they say about her. She keeps moving forward, and all of that is in the service, ultimately, of her daughter, which is big for me.
Yeah. Karyn, how about you?
You know, I've thought about this because obviously the character is super difficult in many ways and not somebody I would have a lot of patience with in my everyday life necessarily. But what I appreciate about her and continue to learn from her, particularly right now at this moment where I feel like there's so many women on a world stage who feel like they have to get past apologizing for their very existence. She walks into a room and she says, "I'm not sorry, and don't ask me to be sorry." And I actually feel like, though she's often wrong in that instinct, there's something essentially very satisfying about seeing a woman who says, "I am who I am, and I'm just not gonna make apologies for it."
Right. Doing a little applause coming up for that, yeah. Yeah, it's kind of, I mean, you mentioned accountability, and I think it's, there's sort of an interesting exploration in that. So the three of you have worked together on several films now. as this one developed, where did it come from? I mean, were you looking at that sort of core of accountability? Were you beginning from a place of genre, or where was it coming from?
We started from a very simple place, which is this came into being in its germ about 10 years ago, and we had an idea for a structure, a way to tell a cop story, and we were bouncing around other projects, and eventually what kind of was the catalyst for really moving forward with it was an understanding of who this was about. And it was about this woman, Erin Bell, and kind of a deeper exploration of her led us to kind of the themes, what's going on, what the movie's about, and that kind of made the structure make more sense to us.
I'm just going to add that sometimes, like with our last movie, The Invitation, I think we knew it came from the theme in a way. It came from a very specific idea about a question that we wanted to ask, and this came from the character, I think. And then later, while we were writing the script and talking to Karyn about the script and then starting to get the movie together, at some point that idea, it was always there, but it revealed itself. And maybe that's because of the world, or maybe that's because of us just, being able to look back at it from a larger perspective. But that idea of being accountable and the idea of not getting away with things being a really important thing to talk about, I think.
Yeah. So it was really, the character was there from the get-go, and the idea of the kind of structure that you wanted to play with was driving that. I mean, talk about her character a little bit, because this is a character that we don't often see. And was there ever any thought that this would be a male character, or was it always going to be a woman?
Well, I think that I don't think there would be a movie if it was a male character. I think when we first started talking about it, we had some of these ideas, and we didn't have the character yet, but we had ideas, and we had other characters, and we had kind of a world. But it was in realizing kind of together. I mean, we had started the conversation and then brought Karyn into the conversation. And part of it also is natural that we really try to see things through Karyn's eyes as we're conceiving of them now. It's really a part of who we are to try to understand where Karyn's going to come from with it. And so the three of us kind of figured out that...
It's a radical moment just now. The man says, I'd really like to see where she's coming from.
Thank you. But I think that was what made it a movie to us, is this character, and that she had to be a woman, and not just a woman, but this woman, this person who it was important to all of us to try to let her live in this story and not just be doing the one thing, not just be driving through this tale, but try to create her family and try to understand who she was on that level. So, I don't know. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to pick up from that. I mean, one of the things that I find fascinating about the three of you working together is that I get this sense of you all as having the sensibility of independent filmmakers, but you work in genre. I mean, with horror, with action, with thrillers, with LA cops. Can you, where does that come from?
I mean, to me, we share a love of all kinds of movies, but I would say there's a certain pocket of American cinema that really just nailed crime, nailed horror, nailed action.
Right.
And within that blueprint is a tremendous opportunity to explore ideas. And I feel like what gets lost sometimes in our conversations about movies are the ideas we're really grappling with.
Right.
And in these cases, I felt like all of the movies we're interested in start with ideas that interest us.
Yeah.
And one of the ideas in Destroyer was, at what cost do we become responsible to ourselves?
Yeah.
And sometimes that cost is very, very high, and it's an instruction in why we don't decide to tell the truth about who we are or own up to who we are or be responsible for who we are. But in the end, there's honor in that, and that is a kind of heroic trajectory for the character.
Yeah, yeah, it definitely is. Did you want to say?
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say I think we all of us together share such a love of all different kinds of movies. I mean, I think, and we're always trying to our peril sometimes combine ones that don't go together or to really try to find a way to do something different within those things or next to those things. And I think the one thing that I would say just as a movie lover is that the genre movies to me often are the ones that I go back to over and over again, or the ones that I've seen 20 times or I've seen 14 times or the first one is Point Break 20 times, and then 14 times would be Aliens.
Yeah.
But like that's those are, and then our desire is to be just be human within those things. That's and I think that's maybe our particular
Your
angle on this.
specialization. Yeah. No, I find it fascinating actually, because I think that's you find something in the nature of genre films that takes us to a different place. It gives you a platform for exploring what's up, with us. I mean, with this film, it's partly her, but it's also LA. I mean, you want to talk a little bit about shooting, because you shot in Los Angeles,
the whole movie was shot in and around LA.
Yeah.
I mean, it was always meant to be an LA movie. Matt is from LA, and I think
he's from Palos Verdes, where Bradley Whitford's character comes from. Didn't live in a house like that, though.
I grew up in a town of corruption and batting cages.
This is an homage piece for you.
Yes. But I think we love LA so much.
Yeah.
And there was a desire to explore parts of LA that don't show up on film very often, but are such an integral part of the city.
Right.
So that's a big part of it. Also, you get to stay home and go home, see your family.
Well, there is that. Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah. But you were shooting entirely on location. Talk about some of the places that you chose to shoot in.
I mean, it was actually finding the movie through the locations was such an amazing experience, because we got to see so many pockets of Los Angeles that I never thought existed. There's a passage in the script that says, Belle and Arturo kind of run up this series of steep hills and land at a bluff with downtown LA behind them and Dodger Stadium in front of them. And I said, are we ever going to find that? And as it happens, there's an abandoned park called Victory Grove Park that, it's like when you step over the used condoms and needles, you're just sort of like, oh, this is
some broken dreams there.
Yeah, the like broken guitars and the you actually
baby doll head.
Yeah. You actually had downtown behind you and Dodger Stadium in front of you, and so we were able to see, just being in places like Inglewood and Echo Park, and there were just so many neighborhoods that just felt like it's a real privilege to actually get to just see this place as it is and not have to. Say again.
Where was the drug house?
The drug house was in Palmdale, which is a kind of desert enclave outside of LA that's pretty hardcore.
Yeah.
And it helped inform the vibe, because it wasn't a beautiful desert community. It was a really rough area.
Yeah. And so that came, you wrote the screenplay before that with that sort of as a non-specific idea, and then the locations actually came afterwards. Is that the way that it happened?
I mean, the idea of the desert was always
there, but the specific where specifically, it could have been in Palm Desert, it could have been Palm Springs, but we had a tremendous location. Robert Folks, who did our locations, was a workhorse and inspired. And
well, that's great. So we have a question. Do we have mic runners in the audience tonight? That sounds like a no. Okay, let's take some questions. It helps, I think, because people can hear it easier. If it's easy to set up, let's do it. Okay, great.
Do you want one of these?
Yeah,
Still one of your mics.
But let's take, yeah,
We're gonna make
okay.
this
then.
happen.
Okay, all right. Well, how about this one right here?
How were you able to get Nicole Kidman?
How were you able to get Nicole Kidman?
Nicole got a hold of the script pretty early. We had met off and on over the past couple of years, just trying to figure out if there was anything we could do together. And she's a very unusual and extraordinary actor in that she just seeks out the artists she wants to work with, and she's not looking for the magic bullet. She's just like, I want to sit down with people who interest me. So we did that a couple of times, and then Destroyer came around, and it felt like, okay, this is something we can start having a conversation about. And she just immediately wanted to dive in.
Let's talk a little bit more about working with her. She was here a couple of years ago with Lion, and at that point she would have been filming Big Little Lies, and she was talking about her process as an actor, and mentioned that she'd gotten so involved in a scene that she was making that she went home and looked at her body and she was covered with bruises. So talk a little bit about how she got into this character and how that was for you as an actor. And I don't know if, as writers, you were involved with, you know, her creative process, but let's talk about that.
Well, I mean, in terms of Phil and Matt, the beautiful thing about Nicole is she actually looks at the script as a map into emotional terrain, and she asks questions about words and references, and meaning means something to her, which is a wonderful thing, I would imagine, from the writer's end to be dealing with. For me, as the director, she probably puts herself in a scarier kind of liminal place than some of her contemporary colleagues. I was surprised by how much more I would call her a method actor than what I had expected. And so it was really interesting to negotiate that, because she's very present as the character. And so you have to really speak to her as the character in a way, which is a trip.
On set.
While you're on set, and,
right.
and while she's in the makeup chair and while she's in her trailer, you're really having to sort of see her and feel her transition into a headspace. And obviously Erin Bell is in a really difficult, damaged headspace. And so every day it was like negotiating with somebody I loved and feared. And in a great way. It felt like a very alive part of the process, but
Right.
she's not somebody who just snaps out of it, because I think that's more work for her to snap in and out than to just be. And so she really commits to kind of a mental state. I mean, she doesn't misbehave or treat people poorly, but she
Right.
just is in a very heavy state when she's playing a heavy character like that.
Yeah, do.
I just wanted to add, as an observer of the process of Karyn and Nicole working together, it was sort of fascinating for us to also learn how to communicate with her in that state, because it's a very and to watch Karyn be able to, like, the two of them just create a real trust and connection that was sometimes very verbal and sometimes almost completely nonverbal, and just sometimes like being together and really like communicating on a level, a really just just connected, quiet level. And so it was really fascinating, I think, to watch. Just the way Nicole works is profound. I mean, it's really like she is willing to just go as far as she needs to, and there's nothing about her that protects herself, which is scary, and also why it's so important to have somebody that she trusts, like Karyn, to say, I will protect you, so you don't have to protect
Right.
yourself, you know.
Right. Yeah, because it's such a physical role. I mean, obviously, you know, everyone has spoken so much about the physical transformation, but that physical transformation is not just that surface thing. You know, it's so much deeper than that. Yeah. Let's take some other questions from the audience. Oh, yeah. Okay.
I was just, I love the movie, and I'd love to see it again, to really absorb it. But when you asked if you had considered a man in the part, to me, the character was not really a woman. But I just found it interesting. Like, I kept, the beginning of the movie, I'm thinking, this could be a man in this role. And then as it went on, I'm looking in her like, how is she a woman? How is she like a woman? And then when you were asking about she's accountable, how is she really accountable? She's guilty and comes clean. I thought that scene with the daughter was fantastic acting, but it disturbed me because I felt like it was
Can't get there, right?
not accountable to the daughter.
Oh, that's interesting. So the question's about
yeah.
the account. Is she accountable, essentially?
Yeah, it was also about, you know, whether she was a sort of how female she was versus how male she was, how accountable she was or not.
I mean, I've always seen the concept of gender as a spectrum, and we all kind of live across a spectrum, and some of us live at one end or the other, and some of us live in a more amorphous middle ground. And I definitely feel like drawn to female characters who possess a lot of, I guess you could say, a kind of masculine energy, but I only say that I'm drawn to that because I see it in myself, and I guess to me, I feel like I'm trying to find the most expansive definition of womanhood, of manhood, of femininity and masculinity, and to your point about accountability, I totally understand what you mean. Like when you say, is she really accountable to her daughter? Does she really come clean? But the fact is, we live in a world where people live in and construct very elaborate worlds of utter falsehoods and lies to continue to advance their own agenda that largely has to do with hanging on to some shred of power. And where has that gotten us? I think to see one step towards saying, I was wrong and I'm sorry, I made a mistake and I'm sorry, you can be better than me, I want you to tell the story of my crime, I feel like that's a step in the right direction. I mean, it's a grim thing to have to look at yourself in the mirror sometimes, and as you might notice, this character never does. Say again?
She does in the bathroom before she hits
That's
the guy.
right. That's right. Yes, you're right. You're very astute. But I think ultimately, on a emotional, psychological level, she's not a self-reflective person. And so what does it take for a person who's not self-reflective to become self-reflective? I suppose that's what I'm trying to grapple with in the movie.
Yeah. Are we struggling with these things? Right?
Yes, we do. I struggle with my own femininity for sure.
I love that you're saying that, you know, just, you know, the gender spectrum is, I mean, I think it's something that I'm going to say that there are a couple of questions up there. So go take a look and see if, go find them and get them a mic,
I've never had such
I can't really see. So.
right? And
You're kind of waving
there
at
you
me,
go.
so.
But I think in all your films, you've really pushed what it is to be a woman. You know, I mean, that's a core part of what you've been examining. When somebody writes the book on your career, that will be sort of one of the through lines that will be explored.
Yeah, I'm very interested in multiple interpretations of femaleness for sure.
Yep. So there is a question over here, and I
Yes,
think we have
over
a
here.
mic. Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to congratulate you all on a marvelous film. I had flashbacks of being 15 years old in a theater seeing To Live and Die in L.A. by the wonderful William Friedkin, and I thought, this must have been a touchstone film for these guys. I'm assuming, because I had never seen a corrupt or such a greed-infused character at all at that age. And this movie really, it brought me back seeing that movie.
I mean, it is one of the movies we spoke about when kind of discussing the film, there's a particular shot in it from inside the car that for some reason stuck with me. It's very immediate and visceral, and it's just a tiny thing in the morning light. It felt very LA to me, and it was one of the things that we discussed one of the movies we discussed when we were.
Yeah, yeah, we watched it like together again. Mostly for Robbie Miller's. Yeah, to look at some of that and just it was nice to see it. I've seen that movie a few times, and it definitely, there's something about its weirdness that is what it really grabbed me and still grabs me. Is it's a really weird movie in a really compelling way to me. Underrated soundtrack.
Yeah. Okay, other questions? Let's go a little bit further back up there. Okay. So
Oh my God.
and I know there's a couple
Was
more
there a
down
hand?
here. We've got enough room. There you go. Use the mic, we'll hear you easier.
So The Invitation was one of my favorite movies of all time. So I really, really loved it.
Right on, thanks.
So the Invitation and Destroyer have a lot to do with like realism in a genre kind of film. How important is realism in today's cinema world, and what attracts you most about realism in a genre film?
I mean, it's so funny because I go back and forth about this concept of realism in movies because to me, even realism is a style. And so I feel it's important that we explore the world as we see it and the world as we may want it to be, or the world kind of outside of reality. Like I feel like there are all kinds of interpretations of how you can make a movie and present your realism. But what to me is really an interesting opportunity with genre films in particular is to feel like you're in a situation you yourself could be in that then becomes extraordinarily, challenging or taxing. And so I think both films explore this idea of what if, we sort of lost our sense of faith in our own community, or what if our sense of personal corruption was so deep it might eat us alive? What would that look like? And so I think that's sort of that's the concept of realism I'm interested in, is sort of extreme states but grounded in a recognizable world.
Thank you.
I think to add to that, I think from my or our perspective, I think the way I respond to the realism, which I appreciate, is that our goal is to give or hopefully reveal the humanity in all of the characters, not just the main character or the first two characters in the list, that we are always trying to offer a voice to those other characters that are in the film. And I think to us, the realism comes from acknowledging that, is trying to listen to all those different people and to try to create a world where it's not just limited by the absolute minimum to tell the story, like in terms of action. It's about people and their feelings, and trying to be as specific as possible.
That's great. We've got time for one last question. There's one here.
I'm curious about your choice to start the film at the end, and then work back, and then her death at the end. Why is it a tragedy? Why make it a tragedy?
Did you all hear that?
I think the choice.
I'm going to repeat the.
It was about why start the film at the end and then come back to it at the end and have it be a tragedy. And I think, putting tragedy aside for a second, the conception was always to have a woman who was ostensibly investigating a case, hunting for a killer, but ultimately the reveal is that she's searching for herself. So she goes on this whole journey looking for what she blames to be for all the things that have gone wrong in her life, and it's ultimately her. So that's the conception behind it. I mean, it's a tragedy. It was always. Go ahead.
I think we always I think we always knew that she felt like she needed to die because she was done, I think, like to us, or like that she had done what she could do, and that she didn't have to, in a way, like it's hard because you think like I don't want to like over-determine it. In a way, like I can see telling the story in a different way, or in her life, a couple things went a different way. She might not have died, she might have lived, but it just always felt that her story was done, and it was given that what she needed to do was to, in her own really messed up way, give her daughter the tools she needed to survive her. And that's what she had to stay alive to do ultimately to us.
And it's funny because I'm the question about the film sort of framing her death as a tragedy is an interesting one, because I sort of go back and forth about whether or not it is a tragedy. I'm a little bit more interested in this idea of like the ecstatic moment when you let the mistakes of your life go. And in this case, it also means her very beating heart. But I feel like we see so much death and destruction in movies, and we just sort of let it wash over us as something we don't have to pay any attention to anymore. And for me, to have spent all this time with this difficult character, I needed to feel like I was also going to be with her at this highly intimate moment of her last memories. And I wonder if that's sort of what we look for out of movies, is like getting closer to people in those most intimate, private moments. And I just felt a tremendous sense of hope that the last thing she might remember is being strong enough to carry her daughter through the snow, even though she was reckless enough to be there in the first place. Why did she go out into the snow? I mean, I think it's the question of why do we make reckless, impulsive decisions? It's something somewhat unknowable, but I suspect she thinks she's showing her daughter a bigger world.
It's the grand gesture
and she does it, but
of a bad parent.
in exactly the wrong way. I guess it's an exploration of how we can fail sometimes as people.
Well, wow. Yeah, I love what you were saying there about, just that sort of profound moment and that sort of intimacy that you get to, and when, she's done. It's a great, it's a profound honor, I think, to be with someone when they're coming into the world or when they're leaving the world. Sure. And there's something of that, I think, is beating in the heart of the film. Thank you all so much for bringing the film.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you for coming.